Okay, so welcome. Let's see, just for the record, today is July 20th, 2025. Um, let's see. So the speaker today will be Brian Goller. Brian's the newest teacher at So Zen. I think Brian's Dharma name is Showan Doko Brian Goller. Brian's been practicing since the 1970s. He got Jukai from Reb Anderson and studied with Reb Anderson. And then he's had a lay practice and then just recently got lay entrustment from Cynthia. And his talk today is called Approaching the Unconditioned. How's that, Brian?
Good enough. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today.
So yeah, I had to give a title to what I'm going to say. So I told Cynthia we could call it Approaching the Unconditioned. And then I thought, well, that sounds a little grandiose, but we'll leave it at that. There's an intelligence within us that operates without our conscious attention. There are cerebral neurons in our digestive gut and our heart. The Chinese recognized this. The character for mind also means heart. And we all know this instinctively. You know, a shock to the mind is a shock to the heart, and vice versa. Sometimes Zen practice is referred to as clearing the mind or calming the mind. And as a trauma survivor, I practice breathing calm ease into my solar plexus, my gut, and into my heart. This is a way I have found for me to calm and ease my thinking mind, to clear my mind, to let go. My experience personally is that I tend to be mentally speaking in my thought processes much of the time. And calming and clearing the mind, letting go, opens me up to a mentally listening posture, a posture of receiving. With a calm, clear mind, I believe that I'm open to wisdom, wisdom from beyond, from the unconscious, beyond the personal self, a spontaneous voice that sometimes speaks to me when I am listening. Prajnaparamita, the gone beyond wisdom. I have endeavored for years to discover and internalize a way to understand emptiness. Emptiness in Buddhism has a special meaning. And, you know, in the language that I grew up with, and I think this is true for most of us, emptiness doesn't mean exactly what it means in Buddhism. It has a very deep and important meaning in Buddhism. Thich Nhat Hanh's beautiful phrase continues to provide an entry for me. He said and wrote, "There is a cloud in the sheet of paper." Everything is dependent on everything else. Red Pine and others, Red Pine wrote a wonderful, he's written a number of wonderful books, but one that I studied with others, his book about the Heart Sutra. And in that book, he asks, emptiness, empty of what? And the answer he finds, empty of self-existence. Whatever is self is dependent on innumerable factors, themselves dependent upon factors. And yet we live in this day-to-day world of our relative existence with at least a provisional sense of self. There's so much information about Buddhist teachings available nowadays. I've had a desire to seek some original or early Buddhist teaching, something from Buddha himself. And this has led me to several things, but in particular, a book titled Early Buddhist Teachings by Y. Karunadasa. Karunadasa writes, Buddha did not claim his teachings to be divine revelation or to be a reformed version of a previous doctrine. He continues, the best way to understand what the Buddha taught is to describe it as a discovery. Thus, with reference to the doctrine of dependent arising, which is the most fundamental teaching in Buddhism, the Buddha says, and this, I want to just pause for a second because this actually hit me importantly when Karunadasa wrote that the doctrine of dependent arising is the most fundamental teaching in Buddhism. I hadn't realized that specifically in that way. So this is what the Buddha says. Whether Tathagatas arise or not, this order exists, namely the fixed nature of phenomena, the regular pattern of phenomena or conditionality. This the Tathagata discovers and comprehends. Having discovered and comprehended it, he points it out, teaches it, lays it down, establishes, reveals, analyzes, clarifies it, and says, look. This quote is from the Samyutta Nikaya. Not divine revelation, but also not temporal or dependent upon conditioning, an unconditioned process of nature, the nature of the universe, what I have called unconscious intelligence, the absolute nature of reality. This is within the realm of nature, things as it is, as Suzuki Roshi said. Buddha called it Dharma. Human beings, however, have the ability to step outside the realm of nature in our minds, to create consciousness and alienation from the way of nature, and thus the realm of dukkha, suffering, arises. Ellen Chen, in her commentary on the Tao Te Ching, writes, humans, through the development of value consciousness, step outside the safe limits of nature, thus becoming cut off from the life of the round. In Taoism, the life of the round describes the observable cyclic way of nature, which repeats a predictable, everlasting pattern and which includes the life of human beings. Birth, growth, flourishing, decline, death, as a repeating pattern of existence. In Taoism, this knowledge of the everlasting, of this everlasting life of the round, is considered to have a redemptive effect. This brings me to Madhyamaka. Madhyamaka. The emphasis on the first syllable, but that's difficult for me for some reason. The view of Madhyamaka, the middle path, as explicated and articulated by Nagarjuna, the profound early 2nd century Buddhist philosopher, provides insight to the unconditioned nature of reality. Madhyamaka is characterized by the doctrine of the two truths. which distinguishes between conventional truth and relative truth. The reality of the conventional truth, or relative truth, the reality of our everyday life, and ultimate or absolute truth, the ultimate nature of reality, characterized by emptiness and conditionality. These truths are not seen as mutually exclusive, but rather as complementary perspectives of reality Understanding both is considered crucial for a complete understanding of Buddhist teaching. Excuse me. The importance of this was emphasized to the great Tibetan mystic Tsongkhapa when, during a prolonged solitary cave retreat, he had a vision of Manjushri, from whom he received the message that, quote, "It is inappropriate to be partial either to emptiness or to appearance. In particular, you need to take the appearance aspect seriously." Tsongkhapa was a great mystic, and he received teachings from long deceased Tibetan masters and Manjushri himself. This was the level of his meditation retreat in the cave. In Buddhism, the view of ultimate reality is sometimes referred to as the unborn. In Sanskrit, that's anutpada. Unborn refers to the reality that transcends birth and death, embodying the absence of a beginning and end. It signifies the true nature of all phenomena, all dharmas, which are not created or destroyed, but rather arise dependently and are empty of inherent existence. This concept is closely linked to the idea of emptiness, shunyata, and is central to Mahayana Buddhism. The unborn is not a state of being that comes into existence or ceases to exist. It transcends the cycle of birth and death, samsara, and is a fundamental aspect of reality. I regard this as another way of characterizing the unconditioned, everlasting aspect of reality. Phenomena, including mental states, are not independently existent, but arise in dependence on causes and conditions. The unborn highlights the dependent nature, emphasizing that phenomena lack inherent self-existence and are not actually born in the sense of being created without antecedents. Every this is because of a that. Bankei, the 17th century Japanese Zen master, emphasized the unborn. That was his signature teaching. He emphasized the unborn as the true nature of the mind, urging practitioners to abide as the unborn by letting go of attachment to thoughts, feelings, self-identification. In my own experience, letting go, but not banishing, letting go. In Bankei's view, the unborn leads to a deeper understanding of impermanence, non-self, and the interconnectedness of all things, ultimately fostering a liberation from suffering. Then there's the Zen question, what is your original nature? What is your original face? Who were you before your parents were born? In my personal experience, I I contemplated this question and started by tracing my human ancestry. And I would go back to maybe Lucy, or before Lucy. Who came before? Who's the original face of humanity? And then even before that, who was the original? What's the original face of the first creatures that came out of the primordial ooze? And what about the primordial ooze itself? Is that my original face? Or what about maybe beyond that? Maybe before that? Maybe the original face is the creation of planet Earth, the creation of the solar system, the creation of the Milky Way, the, the cosmic creation of whatever the universe is. So, thinking like this, I began to focus on the so-called laws of nature and things like the doctrine of dependent arising that Buddha discovered, the way, Tao, the unnameable. But the unnameable that has some, I can't say it, I don't know. Huineng famously said, empty your mind. Now, without thinking of good or bad, what was your original face before your parents met? Now that brings me back to a more human orientation of that question. The original face. As a human being, where does the search for the original face lead? This is still a question. And then there's koan number 37 in the Mumen Kan. A monk asked Jiao Zhou, what is the living meaning of Zen? Jiao Zhou said, the tree in the yard. Actually, it's often written the cypress tree in the courtyard, but I simplified it a little bit so that when I look out my window, it's the tree in the yard. This koan has profound meaning for me. The miracle of the living tree as a symbol of the unconscious intelligence that pervades the entire universe. Is this my original face? Original nature? I recently read an obituary in the news for Andrea Gibson. The headline said, Andrea Gibson, the poet laureate of Colorado and one of America's best contemporary poets, died at age 49. And then the obituary goes on to write, Gibson's words were imbued with a spiritual non-dualism, which recognized the deeply interconnected nature of existence, both in terms of our connection to one another and the world around us. In pulling back the veil, dissolving the fallacious notion that we are somehow separate from one another, we cannot help but be led by love, their work implores. Andrea's preferred pronoun was there, they, or there. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Beautiful. Shall we sit? Steve, you got a bell?